And once again, I want to say greetings to each and every one of you, Aquala, and welcome. Welcome to it is our second Friday of the month, and it's our time to be with Dr. Steph for our regular Friday broadcast, Show Me the Money, where we talk about a broad spectrum of issues related to business development, entrepreneurship, consumer patterns, wealth development, international relations, all areas of interactivity where we do the best we can to create wealth and empowerment, not just for the individuals, but for the collective. Today's date is Friday, the 14th day of February. Happy Valentine's Day to each and every one of you. The year 2025 in the Western calendar. This corresponds to the year 6265 in the Kemetic calendar, to which we realigned our cultural clock. Welcome to the seventh millennium. You have found your family in a peaceful place. Let me welcome to the stage my beloved sister. Great to have you on with us today. Happy Valentine's Day to you, Dr. Steph. How you feeling today?
I'm great, thank you, and happy Valentine's Day to you.
All right, all right, all right. You'll be my Valentine here this morning. How's that?
That sounds fantastic. Maybe we'll gift everyone with some extra love and they'll be
That's right.
motivated, yes, to go to call to action.
Well, hopefully today our global family will send us a little Valentine love. That'll be a beautiful thing. Let's go
Absolutely.
forward. You picked a good topic for today. My apology for a little confusion at the beginning of the start of today's program. My brain is occupied by trying to write too many books at one time and still think about how to engage in the world. It can be a little difficult, but it can be very rewarding down the road.
Absolutely. It is a little bit of both. And sometimes when you have those inspirations, those moments, you have to go with the zone. You have to go with the vibe, the energy of the
That's
moment.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. You've picked a good topic for us for today's conversation. Let's just remind everybody what is our topic for discussion. It is, bear with me, the power of black dollars in action. Very, very important topic, especially when we see the background right now. The nation led by a new government who Donald Trump has been signing executive orders like he owns the government. Some people saying that the richest man in the world hovering over Donald Trump's shoulder as he sits at his White House desk is really kind of more indicative of what's going on. But we stand here now within this month, February, of global trade wars starting, tariffs, threats of tariffs, negotiated deals. It's getting wild, it's getting crazy. All the more important for us to start thinking about the power that we have as the working class, labor earned dollars, and as consumers.
Absolutely. Our dollars are typically a big part of what fuels this economy. And it's gotten so ubiquitous that it's on autopilot. A lot of times people have, because of digitized currencies and transactions and auto payments and subscriptions, people have stopped even paying attention to where all of their resources are being allocated and often the frequency.
Hmm.
When you ask folks sometimes, well, can you figure out, how many subscriptions you have? You may be still paying for subscriptions that you've forgotten are on autopilot. And oftentimes, that's a little bit by design. So it's important to really step back and assess, but realize the value of those dollars and start recognizing the importance of voting with those dollars.
Yeah. Well, and we do vote with those dollars on a daily basis. As you said, some of this voting takes place in the background silently without our even really paying attention. But, every time we open up our wallet, open up our pocketbook, that is a vote to somehow, because everything resounds. It's like you drop a pebble in a pound. The waves ripple out. They may become ever more discreet, but they do continue to ripple out. So let's talk about this black consumer spending, the black dollars in action, and hopefully let's put some sanity to our individual and our collective attitude.
Absolutely. Well, the reason that I really thought about this topic is this is Black History Month. I knew we were going to fall on Valentine's Day, which of course is a marketing, it's a sales promotion. And interesting, before we went live, I caught the tail end of CBS News this morning, and there was this beautiful Nigerian American woman who has a company called 54 Thrones. And she was being interviewed by Gail about by the whole CBS team about her products. And her products are available in Sephora. She talked about leaving her job, taking her retirement, and going to Nigeria because she grew up in America, and then realizing what was happening as an opportunity to bring forth the products. She traveled all across the continent and saw women producing various products. And so she decided to package and make her product, and her product is available. She concluded her conversation with the fact that although she's been featured on Oprah's, favorite things, she's in Sephora, again, now she's on CBS, that the difficulty in building a brand, the challenges of building a brand and therefore driving traction. And so that is really at the core, I think, of part of this conversation, because people respond to call to actions. And this is why certain advertisers dominate the airwaves with their messages, because they want you to constantly keep an awareness of those particular messages. This is also the
Mm-hmm.
challenge when you are a small business or when you are launching a new business, is it takes billions of dollars to build a brand effectively. And a lot of times the challenge of just getting distribution, the same thing, whatever your artistry is, being able to get distribution oftentimes is what's targeted as the objective. However, if you have shelf space in retail, that doesn't mean that people will come to that retail location for your product without the heavy work of creating that brand and
Mm-hmm.
establishing that brand awareness, right? If all of your books, Kitty, are in Barnes and Nobles and no one knows that they're there, then it's possibly, it's a reality that they could be overlooked,
That's right.
even though you would have distribution. And so that's the piece of not only awareness, but that's also the piece of establishing preference. So I was trying to think about what were some good analogies about what I'm talking about. I like coffee. And so I'm pretty sure I drink most days a cup of coffee in the morning. But I don't go out and buy that coffee. I make it at home. I love making a fresh pour over at home.
Mm-hmm.
But it made me think about, when Starbucks came on the scene, for example. And when I'm traveling and I can't make it at home, I will go to Starbucks or, some other location to have a cup of coffee. And what I've discovered is when you look at say the average cost of a visit to Starbucks, which is between $15 and $20, and you think
Whoa.
about exactly the average cost is now between $15 and $20, because an average drink, a beverage, is between $7 and $10 by the time people
Wow.
put all of their different things in there. Imagine that. Coffee
Mm.
and syrup, right? Because that's often what the enhancements include. So
Mm-hmm.
you're paying a premium to what we
Wow.
know make yourself sick ultimately. So we're not even going to have that part of the conversation, because literally
That's
you're,
right.
you're poisoning your system with an overabundance of sugar that's going to lead to other chronic conditions, which, that like I said, another topic for another day. But if you
Mm-hmm.
think about what I'm saying in terms of that call to action, is I want our community to do a test this month of February and save all the receipts. Get a receipt for every expenditure you encounter this month.
Mm-hmm.
This is the 14th day, so you're halfway into the month. Maybe you don't have the receipts for the front half of the month. But if you do, put them all together,
Mm-hmm.
keep them in an envelope. And then I want you to look at where you've been allocating your dollars. I want you to bring those allocations back into your awareness. Because what I think we really want to do is once you have an awareness, we want to then see if we are willing to make a commitment of reducing some of those dollars that are spent with businesses that we can replace, meaning with other Black owned businesses. Can we reallocate some of those dollars that are already been being allocated to Black owned businesses? Can we think about creating cash opportunities? I was a big fan of, remember, we were doing cash mobs, uh,
Mm-hmm. I remember those days,
and
right?
showing up and just bringing, you know, 100 people, if possible, to spend $100 with a small business, and then identifying the next business to do the same thing. Because those infusions of cash are really helpful and make a difference on oftentimes the difference between a business survival, or going under. But what I really want us to look at is creating
Mm-hmm.
collectively some a campaign that allows us to commit a certain amount of dollars so that we can market and help to get the word out about these various businesses and brands that we want to support, that we want to allocate our dollars towards,
Mm-hmm.
so that we can begin. Because guess what, guys? This administration has demonstrated that there's a focus segment of community that those concerns are the priority. If there are no businesses, small
Mm-hmm.
businesses in your community, think about it. Where do your kids go to get their first jobs as young teenagers?
Mm-hmm.
Learning how to work, learning how to develop skills. If there's no local businesses in the community to support those first work experiences and encounters, what do you think? How do you expect your kids to develop those skills? We have to make
That's right.
sure that organizations are able to not only become thriving businesses, but see those businesses grow and expand. And if we want to see a diversity of businesses, we have to be willing to allow our dollars to support those companies. It's just really that simple.
Mm-hmm. It's that simple. Why is it so difficult to see this change? Just this week, word came around once again to take one day and show these retailers that we mean business. But I contend that if we disturb our consumer flow one day out of a 30-day month, it didn't mean anything. If we boycott gas on Tuesday, we buy the gas on Wednesday, and the company who receives our consumer dollars doesn't talk about, oh, well, we lost money last Wednesday, we're in a crisis. No, 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 it doesn't work like that. Why do people keep coming up with these non-functional schemes thinking that they're somehow going to produce some sort of long-term transformation?
Because they're operating without a plan. And it's
Mm-hmm.
great to have a passionate idea, but it's better to take that passionate idea and create a strategic plan.
That's right.
Because you must understand that that's how business functions. Business is functioning from a strategic perspective. The
Mm-hmm.
strategy is, as an entrepreneur, as a CEO, how do I capture my customers' dollars? How do I capture them the most often? How do I reduce my customer acquisition cost? And how do I ensure that I have sufficient capacity within my organization, distribution to reach these various customers and deliver whatever it is that I've offered as my value proposition? And then also, how do I ensure that I have the ongoing capital necessary to not only maintain, but to scale my organizational operations? And so, in doing that, what organizations do is they look at and acquire data, research data that allows them to understand what are the influences, what are the sources of capital that their customers have. How do I continue to keep them engaged? How do I expand and grow my customer market? There's one or two ways with an existing business to expand. That is to get the existing customers that you have to spend more, and it's to get new customers. And so that's an ongoing dance. Do you get new customers because you add new solutions, or you expand your existing assets of offering and you therefore are able to attract new customers? Or do you attract new customers because there's a new market opportunity? That's something that you and I have discussed when we talk about looking at the continent of Africa and
Mm-hmm.
recognize that there are, at minimum, a $2 trillion opportunity. And that then means that there's a new market opportunity that
That's
is not
right.
fully being satisfied. So, what are some opportunities to engage and create shared benefits and growth? A lot of the dollars, if you were to allocate them in other developing countries and markets, they give you a little more leverage. And so that's why I say you want to build those relationships. You want to build the bridge before you need it. You don't
Mm-hmm.
until you're in need to then think, oh, frantically, what should I be doing? So that's really what this is about. It's not only about understanding how we're allocating our dollars domestically, but how can we begin to allocate those dollars globally and begin to create options for yourself and your family?
That's right. Yeah, so very true. The holiday shopping season has just passed. It really begins the week before Halloween. Or actually, some people begin their holiday shopping, in August or so. But this season that the retailers measure their statistics, there's an 80-day range, and then I typically focus on the months of November and December, 61 days. According to the numbers, I'll just put these out real quickly. Amers, this group, Black people in America, spent during the 61 days of November and December an average of $1,117,000,000 a day for 61 days in a row, totaling, I think that totals just around getting close to, but not quite yet, $70 billion over that time period. Over the 80-day period, spent over $90 billion during this bubble. Now, again, this is a bubble. The bubble weighed against the average of what we spend all year long. This bubble then produces this huge amount of spending. Last point I'll make is African American owned businesses, 3.06 million of them, collectively produce in goods and services about somewhere around $200 billion a year. I think last time I checked it was 213, but it fluctuates. During the pandemic, it took a pretty significant hit. While other ethnic groups continued to rise, ours took a very significant hit in the first 5 months of the pandemic in 2020. So the challenge becomes twofold. Number one, can we disrupt this bubble of spending where during the bubble we are spending $9 as consumers for every $1 in products and services that our 3.06 million businesses produce? Can we disrupt that pattern?
Uh, it depends. Because, yes, we can set an intention, but others have to be enrolled in that intention.
Mm-hmm.
and have to have clear call to action and awareness. And the great news is that is happening. I had the most amazing conversation with two women earlier this week who are building businesses, and they are in the space of providing particular solutions to Black women in particular. And the other one is kind of more, general, but one lady's particular intention is to help 10,000 Black women connect in community and work on their mental well-being and
Mm-hmm.
healing. And the second lady does yoga and Reiki and a lot of courses and spending time between Mexico and Belize. But what I loved about speaking to both of these ladies is that they're younger. I'd say, late 30s, early 40s. And they were very clear, not only in their intentions about what it is they're working on, but really wanting to ensure that they're participating in an ecosystem where the businesses look more like them. And so if that means doing, a smaller retreat, one of the ladies was saying, well, we are interested in supporting the smaller businesses within this ecosystem. So if that means that we have to limit our participants to 10 people at a time for a retreat, then we would rather make that limitation rather than going to a larger facility, because our intention is to make sure that our resources are supporting these community based businesses at their size and scale so that they have an opportunity to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's happening. There is a collective awareness and shift. I'm beginning to see communities coming together, collaborating, and creating spaces and places that reflect, family values, shared economics, um, but also just recognizing that a lot of times people's behaviors are even deeper baked into emotional connections and trauma. People are not always, if you will, shopping or consuming because there's a need, when in some cases it's just because it's become a habit or
Mm-hmm.
it's become a fix to mask a particular pain.
That's right. And we are in pain. We are burdened. I write a lot about health issues. And one of the challenges facing our larger community is the overweight obesity crisis that we're undergoing. And when I write about this overweight obesity crisis as it impacts African women in America, I talk often about the burden because she's burdened multiple ways. She's burdened in having to earn a living in an economy where used to be one married couple, one man's salary could support a wife and four children. Uh, we're also seeing many different burdens that are taking place across the board. So we we have to put these into context. Now, somebody's trying to call me. I don't know whether they're trying to call me on Facebook or wherever, but I got a chirp, chirp, chirp in my ear. I hope you're not hearing that. Um,
No worries.
okay, so going forward, we have to we people strive to kill the pain of living. Some people turn to medical pharmaceutical drugs. Some people turn to alcohol. Some people turn to food addictions, different type of addictions. Some people get addicted to makeup and hair. I just found out, and correct me if I'm wrong, that women doing their nails, and some men are doing their nails as well now, are spending as much as $200 or more a month on doing their nails. Is that accurate? You would know better than I would.
I would believe so. I actually have natural nails, and so I don't go to the salons because oftentimes, I don't want not only the chemicals, but also
That's
they're
right.
not used to caring for natural nails. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
So I don't like them filing and doing all the things that they're doing. So I spend a little time there. But yes, I've noticed, and that's the same thing is there. Some people don't remember a time when nail shops weren't on every corner or spread out throughout
Mm-hmm.
the community, in mass. But what happens oftentimes are when other folks are looking to immigrate into the US
That's
and to
right.
create their family wealth, they come into this country and they've been encouraged to set up businesses in what are considered traditionally Black communities because they
Mm-hmm.
know that the consumers will patronize those businesses. And it's twofold. One, it's twofold because, on one level, many of those communities are starved of businesses because they have not been able to get the capital or launch the business. And also, there was a certain psychology that said, hey, our families thought that getting an education and getting a job was a better path for a better life, a future, a retirement, because so many of the businesses previously have not been underpinned with the right structure and the right resources. And so instead of seeing a lot of businesses grow in scale, what you end up having are what are considered more lifestyle businesses, or someone
Mm-hmm.
successfully created a job as opposed to being able to have the internal processes in place to really create a thriving business. And so, the pendulum always shifts in a different direction. And so, I kind of, as a young person, I said this to my grandmother because my grandmother would say, well, you should just be happy and try to get a good corporate job. And I said, well, some people should do that. But those of us who are
Mm-hmm.
given the assignment to create businesses should also do that. The
That's right.
problem is that there's not a thriving ecosystem to support those businesses. If it is that you need capital, you're going through an underwriting process that says, hey, show me 3 years of revenues. Well, how do you start up a business with 3 years of revenue?
Mm-hmm.
Show me your collateral and credit. Well, Mark Zuckerberg and all those guys were in college. Where was their collateral and credit? Clearly, that wasn't required for their intellectual property to be created and investable. And that was
Mm-hmm.
part of what Silicon Valley emerged as a way to foster innovation, but more importantly, a way to capitalize innovation. And it's that kind of same intention that has to be created within our communities. Allocate some dollars towards the development of some of the businesses. If you feel, because I hear people say, well, this business is not providing customer service at this level, or the products are overpriced. Guess what? Those businesses could benefit from having access to a management consultant firm, someone,
Mm-hmm.
advisors such as myself. Many times those businesses have not had that type of input. So they are not operating in the most efficient manners, but they can
Mm-hmm.
be fixed. You know,
They can be fixed.
they can
Many
be
times, many times we'll see equity investors come in. They see these high value areas of consumption or production, and they'll come in and say, "We think your business is worth 3 times the revenue that you're producing. So therefore, we're going to come in, provide the capital, take an equity position for however many years, 3, 4, 7 years, grow along with you, and then cash out." But among the many things that they do is that they bring in a team of advisors and managers that are going to manage that business moving up to that level. Isn't that many times what equity investment is all about?
It can be, absolutely, but that's why with the model, the iVent Labs model that I'm using to execute the training and development of the 10 million farmers and entrepreneurs that I've created as my social impact initiative, it's really designed from that type of model where
Mm-hmm.
we create the leadership while helping to develop the leadership in the organization and scaling that business. And so when I developed the model, I developed a 135. And so the first goal is to get each business to $1 million in revenues. The reason being is at $1 million in revenues, that's enough volume to be able to also have resources to evaluate and fix internally whatever processes are failing to function at their optimal level.
That's right.
But it's also a number that I noticed with the owners and the leaders. For some reason, that first $1 million tends to break the team. It's a
Mm.
fictional number that the team can fall apart. And so I know that, and so I purposely want to get us there as fast as we can so we can address the cracks in leadership. Once we've done that, then it's we move to 3 million. And at
Mm-hmm.
3 million, we've now really figured out how to optimize the processes and systems. So then from there, it's easier to get to 5 million. And at 5 million, there's a number of resources that become available that allow that business to really grow and scale. And so that's the reason
Mm-hmm.
I picked those three revenue targets, because it also, as we're growing the business, it allows us to activate the answer to customers, capacity, and capital, and ensure that the business is further scalable beyond that point. Or if the entrepreneurs are looking to exit, it's now at a certain value that makes it a consideration, for an acquisition target. But this is again where having a clear plan is essential.
That's right. Is essential. I want to say greetings to our listening audience, whether you're tuned in today on Rumble, which is our main channel. I see you in the house. For Africa One, Sister Shingai, she says, Hetep, brother and sister, Dr. Steph, and global LIB family. It's a pleasure to be with you today. And if you're on YouTube, we are broadcasting on YouTube today. You Now, TuneIn app, on Facebook Live, wherever you are, just drop a note, hit the like button, help the algorithm to pay a little closer attention to what we are doing. We are talking today on the very serious subject of the power of black dollars in action. Making Money Fridays with Dr. Steph. Show us the money, Dr. Steph. Where can we expect to see, where can we look, I should say, to find the power of black dollars in action that will give us a better sense of self confidence about our collective work and responsibilities?
So I think if we look south and east, where we see really larger communities, oftentimes you can begin to see the signs. I mean, I'm seeing communities of collectives forming. I'm seeing, the return to Black farmers launching farms to not only provide foods for their families, but really to build a certain amount of food capacity to support ecosystems. I'm, expanding both our business model in the US, in Southern California, while at the same time, launching the Jamaica and other global market locations. So there are businesses that are beginning to really recognize that by collaborating, we have a shared interest. And I'm seeing more and more people take a stab at the areas that they've been called to. I was speaking with another dynamic, a husband and wife team that really focuses on building relationships and helping couples build and sustain their relationships. Because again, the importance of a solid family foundation is essential to building. I shared with someone years ago. I was so impressed by this young couple. They had been relocated from Atlanta, Georgia, to Irvine, California, and the husband had taken a big corporate job, and the wife was raising the kids, but also was in real estate, and so had begun to learn how to invest in real estate assets. And so the husband proudly said, look, I'm making the money to care for our household. My wife is taking that money and creating our wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, that teamwork, understanding that together they could bridge some of the gaps, some of the challenges that exist when you're looking to create a business. So here's some things. I always like to give some practical solutions. So here's some
Mm-hmm.
things. If you're working for a corporate organization and that organization has a vendor list, and you recognize the types of services and products that that company buys, look and see if you have businesses that you can help to get on that vendor list in the community.
Mm-hmm.
Help them with some intellectual understanding of who some of the buyers are and what their preferences are. Coach some of those businesses maybe on how they can become clients of that organization. Listen, I did this. I was a consultant very early in my career with Calcan, M&M Mars. And in that relationship, I ended up having oversight of the global vendor program. And so I went to several organizations, the Black Business Association in particular, at that time I was involved with, and I trained businesses that I wanted to help get on that vendor list. I added to opportunities for other small businesses to be able to do business with that organization by bringing them in and identifying opportunities, because that was a way of allowing those businesses access, to a privately held multi-billion dollar organization.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are kinds of activities. If you are a person that you have a great, credit profile because you've had steady income, and there's somebody in your family that's looking to start a business and maybe they don't have the ability to have that profile, consider backing their entity as a guarantor for the first couple of years to help them establish those debt options that will allow that business to have the fuel that it needs to grow. Consider, sometimes it's something as simple as consider giving a business, $100, $200 a month to pay for the website, pay for some of the branding and social media, the pay for some of the advertising that they need. Make that type of commitment for a year, 2 years, give them some kind of consistent support to help them with the basic things that are
Mm-hmm.
necessary. SaaS subscriptions, and all of those things cost a lot of dollars, but they're essential because we have to have, if
Mm-hmm.
you have a brick and mortar location, you must have a presence physically, if that's the type of business that you have. If you have a virtual footprint, it's not as simple as just building it and they will magically come. There's a lot that goes into helping people
Mm-hmm.
find your business and your brand. And it's about being able to have continuity and consistency in those efforts.
Mm-hmm. The theme of today's program, Black Dollars in Action. If we're looking across the black community, it seems like one of the most prominent areas where we see the black dollars in action is the investment in churches and religion, and the amount of money that people spend centered around these spiritual and or religious experiences. Your thoughts on that? Is it, are we getting a return on that investment for the amount of capital that's being directed that area?
Oh, I cannot speak about some of this, but I'm gonna speak about one organization. So I also had a real big influence in the a Christian community as well. I come
Mm-hmm.
from the Bay Area, and I'm so grateful that I happen to be a member of a church that's well regarded, Allen Temple Baptist Church. Pastors Alfred J. Smith really was very cutting edge, very much aware of entrepreneurship and building community. So actively investing in the community, building, assisted living, senior housing, those types of things that create a stronger community. It was great to have that kind of leadership. Many facilities now, many churches have added community development corporations as part of their efforts to increase the viability within their communities. And that's an important use of dollars and being able to leverage and repurpose those dollars within communities. Not
Hmm.
all, but many have begun to understand the importance of the church leveraging the resources. Here's
That's right.
one issue that I still see too
Hmm.
often is those dollars are still disproportionately placed in banks, large institutions
That's
that
right.
really don't have a shared interest in supporting the communities. And
That's
so
right.
that's where those institutions fall short of using the dollars that they have. If you were to allocate those dollars to either a credit union or create your own financial institution and repurpose
Hmm.
those dollars to become a commercial source, again, to support the businesses in the community and leverage those dollars accordingly, you change the dynamics of the ecosystem within your community
Hmm.
by just doing those types of making those types of decisions. And there's ways, when you start looking at oftentimes what people say, well, what about this loss? Listen, if you really are concerned about loss, there are ways to mitigate against losses. There are, policies and instruments that are in place that other institutions use as well to mitigate against risk and hedge their bet against loss. But oftentimes, what you find are determined entrepreneurs, if given access to resources, many of the entrepreneurs outperform, other groups just
Hmm.
because the desire is so strong, the needs are so clear, and the intentions are about delivering a solution. And again, if we have access to resources, then those solutions can be improved upon. If there's gaps, there's always going to be some gaps, but nobody thinks about that when you're talking about other products. How many big organizations have introduced buggy software into the marketplace? They don't
Hmm.
they don't make it perfect. They get it, you know, functioning at some level and get it to market, and they sort of build the plane while they're flying
That's
as they
right.
continue to perfect and, um, get feedback from the user experience.
Hmm.
So that's what we have to do. We have to iterate as well as we go.
That's right. Very, very important. And we've also have to not only iterate as we go, but understand the nature of the strategic game. In the book Disaster Preparedness, I do talk about game. I have a chapter called Game Theory for Masters Level Competition. And it just seems like the resources that we have, and I'm talking specifically about black people inside of the United States, because this is a concentration of wealth and resources, assets, and experiences within a solid group of people. I just recalculated the numbers, over 62 million of us. That is, unfortunately, as my daddy would say, being pissed away because our strategic leaders, governance, they're just not organized to be competitive in a world. I am writing a book called The African Future. You know about the research I do on Pan Africanism. And the chapter is called Bridging the Gaps, Transitioning to Modern Industrial Infrastructure, where I have a significant subchapter talking about African automobile industrial expansion. And I go through country by country, South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, Morocco, Tunisia, Ethiopia, Uganda. Many of these countries, there's a lot of automobile assembly factories and a few manufacturing factories. Ghana is doing more manufacturing. Of the top 10 black owned businesses, according to Black Enterprise 100 list in America, six of those top 10 are in automobile parts and or services to the automobile industry. I have not been able to find any evidence at all with this rapidly growing African automobile assembly and production, with the rapid growth of consumption of automobiles across the African continent. I've seen no evidence at all that even one of these six African American automobile industry corporations has aligned themselves with any of these African should be partners. Meanwhile, they're getting their cars and their parts from Japan, France, England, Italy. It goes on and on. You know what I'm talking about. Why this disconnect?
So again, it ends up being about execution, and it also ends up being about connection. One of
Mm-hmm.
the things that I thought about, because somebody said, what makes you think you can create, 10 million sustainable businesses over the next decade? And I said, well, first of all, before I sort of put out what I felt I could accomplish, is I worked from the end back to right now. And I looked and said, what would be necessary in order to create an opportunity for these entrepreneurs that I believe have potential, right? So for me, it was, well, let me find a big enough customer. If I find the big enough customer, and then if I understand the gaps in the current levels of capacity, right? And I figure out a way to address those gaps. Then by bringing smaller organizations, which is often what I do from an investment standpoint, doing a roll up strategy, then I could find a way to create opportunities. And instead of having these businesses exist independently, pulling them together in a collective marketplace. And so that's the thing that is challenging. I was thinking about that before coming on with you today. We have to have ways to collect to the marketplace and recognize where we are easily. And I think that in some instances, those types of marketplaces are being developed, but more or less in a silo. So I think what happens is
Mm-hmm.
they lean into what's easy and convenient, as opposed to, again, exploring what may or may not be out there. It's lack of brand aware. If you have a brand, either you're not going out and doing business development to target market opportunities, and the manufacturer needing your parts is not doing the research to try to find you. They're going to
Mm-hmm.
the obvious solution providers that have made their names or their distribution processes available.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you can't expect that if my objective is to manufacture a product on a deadline and schedule, and you have a piece that could be considered part of that process, it's both sides should be encouraged to look for one another, but let's keep it, realistic. Each is working on their own so-called deadline, but if you have a solution, you want to get your solution to potential customers, and that work never ends.
Yeah, that work never ends. Of course, at certain point, at all points, really, the power of communications to specifically serve the growth and expansion of the community becomes absolutely critical. And unfortunately, we've seen over the past 2 decades largely the dismantling of black serving communication networks across the country. As part of this extensive communications network, operating from the internet gives me a great advantage that because communications is very, very expensive, while at the same time we have to compete against these corporations like Alphabet, Google, like Elon Musk, X, and the our ability to communicate when we're so resource starved, when we're investment capital starved, is obviously extremely curtailed. Nonetheless, we don't die, we multiply.
Absolutely. And I think that that's the important thing to remember. When you recognize that there's a gap or there's a challenge, and you decide to kind of, instead of just stating it, but thinking about how can I address it?
Hmm.
How can I call into this conversation some other bright minds? That's why it's so important to create spaces where we gather about real that that's to me what I thought, what I look forward to in this conversation with you
Hmm.
is my goal when I come on is not to just talk about a topic because that topic is interesting or to be glorified, but to really suggest some meaningful actions that can be immediately deployed
Hmm.
and to produce some outcomes.
That's right.
Sometimes I'm accused of being such a taskmaster in that particular way, but it's because it takes action. That's why it was, let's put these dollars in action. Let's get them motivated, but more importantly, let's deploy them with clear intention so that we can start measuring some outcomes. Collecting your receipts, that's an action. That's going to
That's
help
right.
you get some information. And if you get that information, now you have you're informed. Now you're better able to make some decisions because it's not you're guessing, it's that you're very much aware of where your dollars are being allocated and where you can potentially make some different allocations. These are
That's right.
actions, they're steps. And hopefully, if you take them, they begin to move the needle.
That's right. And moving the needle is absolutely a must. We're talking today with Dr. Steph on this topic, the power of black dollars in action. Love to hear from you, a listening audience. Where do you see black dollars either in action, making a positive benefit, contribution, or you see them in action, but they are not contributing? I did mention the church, and I would never and could never say that the church is not investing in aspects of sustainable development because I know better than that. I'm not allowed to say things just because I'm emotional. I may not like this or that church or this or that congregation. No, we have to be accurate because we have to lead our people, and only the truth will lead us forward sustainably. Yet then again, the churches are amongst the greatest real estate holders of all black institutions, organizations in the United States. According to the research of Jeremiah Kamara, the last time I heard, there were some 80,000 black churches in the United States, a significant number of whom did own the real estate or were in stages of owning significant equity in their real estate. And that's not a joke. That's something that could be taken very seriously if there were a strategic plan. You have a background in real estate development, commercial real estate development. Let me just ask you this. Based upon this idea, and I'm just kind of throwing these statistics off the top of my head, if say 40% of the black churches, of which there were 80,000 in the United States, if 40% had significant equity in their real estate or owned it outright, how could that be leveraged towards the benefit of the larger group?
Oh my goodness. Easily. Many of them, again, as I mentioned, have CDCs. So they already
Hmm.
have the permission to do economic development. So, under that economic development, every church would have an incubator and accelerator model that is designed to really work and produce businesses. Sadly, what I'm finding and what I've experienced in many of these environments is that again, it depends upon the leader. If the leader understands business and economy and is educating the congregation accordingly, then there's an opportunity. If the leader is basically discouraging the congregation from being entrepreneurial and then also supporting those ventures, then unfortunately those resources are wasted. And it's
Mm-hmm.
really short-sighted, because if it is that you are incubating businesses, so say you have this real estate, and what are some of the things that your congregation typically does? Before church, oftentimes people are looking for a snack. So we know restaurants and foods, coffee and snacks are opportunity. So restaurants, what businesses should be available right there at the church location or immediately adjacent to
Mm-hmm.
benefit? What other resources could be available from members of the congregation that have businesses, or the community that's immediately adjacent, the ecosystem that's being built around that church, that footprint? There's Bible studies, there's a lot of activity around engagement with that facility. So if you incubate those businesses, if you give those businesses access to a line of credit, if you help to facilitate access to equipment financing and the types of, capital intensive requirements in order for a business to build capacity. There are, oh my goodness, I could see CDCs having retail centers that
Mm-hmm.
actually allow businesses to get their start. There's a brilliant model. The One of the publicly traded REITs that I dealt with had launched a program, and I became an advisor for that program to help incubate new retail concepts. And it was set up in such a positive way that literally what they would do is try to, one, have the business put together their solid understanding of their market, and then based upon their market, identify a location within their portfolio that would help them match up with that demographical profile. And then they would give the entrepreneur access to a space that was empty but had a lot of the tenant improvements in place, again, so that the business didn't have to invest upfront in major tenant improvements, but could test the concept for the first year and only had to pay the lease requirements and insurance, very basic expenses to operate, as opposed to having to invest in major equipment and tenant improvements. And what that would allow is an opportunity for that business to be incubated for the first year. And if at the end of the year, if for some reason the concept didn't gain traction, then that entrepreneur would walk away without having to be financially devastated and all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
If it is that the concept gained traction, then they would still negotiate a favorable lease to give them another 3 to 5 years, to continue to build out that opportunity. And if it really gained traction, they would help to accelerate the growth of that concept throughout their portfolio.
Yeah.
And so those things we can do. We can
Mm-hmm.
do, but we must partner with people who have the skill set to do those things. Not everybody that wants to enter the commercial real estate development space is qualified to do so in the way that I'm describing. The distinction is not just understanding the commercial real estate, but understanding how you build out a business ecosystem and what that needs to look and feel like and function like strategically. That was the first part of my career, advising, Fortune 500s on typical consumer related issues. And I remember very early in my career, I owned advertising and marketing communications agency that really focused on consumer engagement. I
Mm-hmm.
remember in the beginning, I used to complain, why do I have all of these problems to solve? But what I realized is that it made me an outstanding problem solver. especially for brands, and trying to determine, what should we do with this brand? Is this asset now going to become obsolete? Is it something that we can reinvent? Is there a new
Mm-hmm.
potential customer segment out there? What are the causes of the existing customers who previously were customers now going to other options, fixing those brands? And making sure that they could set a new course, recasting their financial futures by understanding strategically how to effectively produce those outcomes. And I tell people, I remember when I was doing an internship when I was in college, I went to school in San Francisco. I was in the San Francisco Union Square district. And I remember doing a Royal Dalton Bunny promotion for Macy's in Union Square. And I don't know why, but I was just so intrigued about how that particular sales promotion, if my encounter with a customer was effective, that customer would then go straight to the cash register and purchase, one of the Royal Dalton bunnies. And so that became really interesting that I could impact somebody's decision at that level. And so it always made me very curious and willing to get out in with the customers and watch their behavior, but more importantly, listen to them and learn from them. When I had my agency, we would host focus groups on particular messaging and products long before they were ever launched and advertised, so that we really understood from the segments that we thought would be interested in our messaging how to ensure that they were not only interested, but that it landed appropriately, and more importantly, it motivated them to take action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Taking action is what it is all about. That's why we are here on Thursdays. We're going to begin to focus on calls to action for the rest of the program today. It wouldn't be Making Money Fridays with Dr. Steph if we didn't put serious calls to action on the table. And I do know you are, and I am, we are individually and collectively working a lot to redirect much of our black health care and wellness related spending into sustainable development. So maybe that's a good place to start with calls to action for black owned businesses, dollars in action.
Absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned that on the wellness. So I did a presentation earlier this week, giving an update to our team. We have a global team of brilliant minds that are all part of what Zeniverse Wellness Group has been creating. And so I wanted to bring everybody together for a couple of reasons. One, because people are in different time zones and working in their respective silos, and not everyone had had an opportunity to realize who else is on team,
Mm-hmm.
And so this presentation was sort of like my, you know, I called it the blissful 2025 forecast for Zeniverse. And in
Mm-hmm.
that, I wanted to remind them at the core what we are offering as a value proposition. So I found a picture of someone in the hospital being treated for COVID. And the person was in the hospital bed, hooked up to the various tubes. And so a COVID
Okay, and I hate to interrupt, but we are broadcasting today because it was money centered on YouTube, and I'll completely avoid that word or
okay,
anything associated. So talk around it without saying the word because it'll trigger the algorithms.
okay, no worries. So
Mm-hmm.
what the illustration that we were looking at was just saying, what is the cost of chronic conditions that are treated in a hospital environment? And so the investment to be hospitalized for a week on average is somewhere between, it begins at about $22,000 for a
Mm-hmm.
7-day stay in a hospital, um, excluding any kind of surgery or advanced equipment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to contrast that with what a wellness week is, to come to spend 7 days 6 nights with us at our wellness resort, which is
Mm-hmm.
between $8,000 and $16,000, depending upon the location, per person per week. And so the idea was, would you rather spend 22,000 plus for a 7-day stay where you're hooked up with tubes, or I had this couple seated beachfront, kicking
Mm-hmm.
back with the sun shades on, and they're also experiencing wellness, but in a
That's right.
preventative, proactive manner for a third of really what it is you're talking about in terms of the contrast.
That's right.
And
And
so I put that there.
the preventive investment will last. Meanwhile, the reactive emergency investment, once you leave, you might be back in a few days or a few weeks with the exact same problem.
It's a revolving door oftentimes.
That's right.
That journey is, you're just on a merry-go-round coming back and back and back for the next thing, the next thing, the reaction to the next thing. And so in that, what I really wanted to urge people to think about, we're talking about the economy of your business, but frankly, if your body is exhausted, we talked about, carrying the burdens and carrying the extra weight. Listen,
Mm-hmm.
guys, I know there's a tendency to look for a microwave solution, which is what many
Mm,
people are doing. Again, treating the symptom. I have a weight problem, so let me go and use a quick drug to help me to produce an outcome of lost weight, not let me understand and fix the underlying decisions that I'm making daily about what it is I'm consuming and detoxing those toxins from my
mm-hmm.
body and tissues in a natural manner, as well as understanding that it all begins mentally. It's mindset.
And
How
intellectually as well.
you do anything is how you do everything. What are the intentions that you are setting for your well-being, and what are the examples that you're wanting to model and demonstrate for whomever it is,
Mm-hmm.
those family, the community, that professional environment that you occupy? People are paying attention to you. So what is it that you're demonstrating by your behavior and your choices about what you think is most valuable? And
That's
here's
right.
the thing, people will lean into their consumption over themselves. I'm stunned. I had a person with a chronic condition tell me that they were more concerned about paying for new hardwood floors than paying for getting their body detoxed, because
Mm.
they had made their investment in sick care.
Yeah, wow. Well, I guess if you're going to be fainting and falling on that floor, at least you want to have a nice, clean, beautiful floor to fall down on.
No, I said basically you're getting it ready for the next owner.
That's right. Ooh, you're absolutely right. And when you were talking about how people will take these short-term reactive solutions as opposed to investing in long-term transformative solution, one that comes readily to mind, and this is increasingly a problem, is gastric bypass surgery. Rather than learn the reality of the science of nutrition and to apply your knowledge that you have acquired towards application of the science of nutrition, they're opting for this quick fix by gastric surgery, which many times will, for the first 6 months, cause significant weight loss. But they never solve the problem of what is the nutrition that my body needs. So once the body adjusts to the smaller stomach pocket, they're still eating the same foods that created the crisis, the disorder in the first place. Now they have a double dilemma because I'm still eating bad foods or inappropriate foods for what my body needs, or but I can't eat so much of it, so I have to eat more often of this junk. And I hear it again and again. I hear it directly from people. who have undergone the bypass surgery, but 6 or 8 months, maybe a year afterwards, they gain the weight back.
Absolutely. And oftentimes it's not only the initial weight, it's the initial weight plus some, right?
Mm,
Because it's like they overdo it. Absolutely. And then there's another one, there's been magic shots now being introduced and marketed at a high volume. And, I said to my team as soon as I was made aware of what was going on is, oh my goodness, how many people are going to experience different levels of kind of organ failure and all of that stuff, and what
yeah.
kind of detox, tinctures and tonics, should we put in place. And in fact, the reason that we're rushing to, not rushing, but adding a earlier launch date for some of our domestic locations is twofold. One, I started thinking about it initially when I realized all the devastation from the wildfires and all of those toxins going into people's bodies and their
Mm-hmm.
lungs, breathing and all of that stuff, and genuinely saying, oh my goodness, we do have some solutions. But more importantly, the mental anguish,
Mm-hmm.
that part, right? That mental trauma and stress, knowing that that's what leads to dis-ease. So then if you have that coupled with your body being poisoned at the same time, that's going to accelerate, the manifestation of chronic conditions. And some of these things can too be mitigated, but you
Yeah.
have to look to those options for mitigation. You don't have to be poisoned and cut right away. Come and get your body cleaned and detoxed. Let's start there first.
Yeah, that's
Start
right.
there
That's right.
first.
Let's talk about some other solutions. We're kind of
Sure,
treading into that health and wellness thing. Normally, when I'm talking on issues of health and wellness, I do not broadcast on a certain channel.
sure,
They get a
sure.
lot of revenue from the very things that we might be talking bad about.
Okay. So let's shift it into, I wanted to create that action plan of, first of all, show me the money. Let's find the money, right? You have it.
That's right.
Let's not even talk about new money. Let's talk about what you already are allocating. So first, let's
That's right.
become aware. Where is my money going right now? So what I asked at the beginning is to create for the next 30 days. Get a receipt on every transaction that you complete, and put all
Mm-hmm.
of those receipts in an envelope. And at the end of this 30-day period, go back through those receipts and look and understand where you have spent those dollars. Now
Mm-hmm.
that you have a total of how much money you're spending where over a 30-day period, look and see if there are any Black owned businesses that can provide some of those products or some of those solutions that you've spent your resources on.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one. And if there are, look into patronizing those particular businesses and start to consciously allocate some resources towards those businesses.
That's
If
right.
you don't have businesses that are able to provide all of the various solutions that you're needing, I challenge you to think about putting together a dollar to dollar ratio. If I'm spending a dollar with X business, I'm going to put together a dollar in a jar that I'm going to allocate to spend to with other business. And once that jar comes to $100, then go and spend those dollars with a Black owned business,
Mm-hmm.
and encourage and challenge other members in your family, other members in your community. Use this as a way to create team economics. If you have kids in school, they always have the kids coming up with, selling candy and junk in order to raise money for their teams, associations, and all. Introduce some other business solutions of raising money and patronizing community businesses in those environments as well. Don't
Mm-hmm.
just jerk accept selling the chocolate and the candy and all of these things that really are not contributing to the well-being of the kids or the community.
That's right. Yeah. Solutions all around us. We just gotta get focused, get on point. For people who are members of clubs, members of sororities, fraternities, members of churches, What kind of collective actions could benefit people who have access to their peers and can work collectively, collaboratively to make an even greater impact?
Oh my goodness, I would really love to organize some cash mob actions again. I think that it's
Hmm.
really important, some cash solutions where we come together and have businesses that, we can have, 10 businesses, a month, that a group of us want to figure out how we can strengthen them. We can look at where they have gaps in the organization. They need additional support with customers, they need additional support with capacity, they need additional support with capital. Well, typically, if you solve the problem first, then that'll help you begin to solve the other two, right? And so let's start with the customer bucket. Let's increase customers, fix customer relationships, expand customer opportunities. Let's start there. And at the same time, let's look at ways to make those resources, once they enter the business, be more efficient in how they work within the business so that the business is able to begin to really grow and scale. And so, groups, this is great. Many of the sororities and fraternities have social impact initiatives.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, it means going to a big resort and doing a lot of big conventions, and that's great. It brings a lot of money into those environments. Let's look at doing some of those efforts and finding other businesses. I'm booking groups right now for my resorts. Look for some other options and make some commitments to some other businesses so that those businesses have an opportunity to realize the benefits of your convention dollars. In my case, I'm like, you want to support us so we can support you. You're
Hmm.
building a bridge to your future possibility. So hopefully, by supporting us, you really are making sure that you're able to support you and extend your life. So it's a
That's
win-win.
yeah, it's a win-win situation. People need to know that you do broadcast regularly on YouTube as well. How can people maintain contact and see some of the other places where your work shows up?
Yes. So on YouTube, it's at Naked with Dr. Money is my channel. And then go to Zeniverse, Zenoverse, wellnessgroup.com. That is the best place to connect with us, zeniversewellnessgroup.com. And from there, you'll be able to not only understand Zeniverse, but also we have 420 Wellness Jamaica brand. But I'll just kind of direct you to Zeniverse and see, what you think when you get there.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Xenoverse Wellness Group.com is where you're going to find much more about what Dr. Steph is up to. We're going to have to wrap it up here for today's conversation. It's been an informative conversation. I like these conversations that we have that talk about the assets we already have. How can we just be wiser at allocating them for long term, sustainable, and sovereign development? We've got a long way to go, but we've got great reasons to be excited. I think that one thing all of us need to do to get our attitude better is just from time to time pull out a notepad and make two columns: one assets, one liabilities. I often ask of people of African or black heritage, what assets do we have as a people that the world needs that we could leverage into a better position? And it's kind of surprising, shocking, that sometimes people will say we don't have anything. I think they've been listening too much to Claude Anderson, who's one of the most pessimistic people I think that is out here. We should be talking about what assets we do have, where we are successfully leveraging them, and how can we build upon that. Let's get some final thoughts that you want to share before we wrap it up for today, Doc.
Absolutely. I think we have uh, a treasure of innovation. We just have to activate that innovation. And so
Hmm.
we have to create spaces for those innovations to not only be nurtured, but to be encouraged to come forward. And that's really the big part about my, entrepreneurial vision, along with demonstrating how you build a sustainable organization as I do so and share that journey with people so that they understand what it looks like and feel like, but more importantly, helping to enroll other entrepreneurs in that journey as both suppliers. In some cases, those businesses are able to be accelerated. In some cases, those businesses require incubation, but being willing to invest that time and create the capacity to be able to offer those types of solutions. So what I would say, if I were to create a call to action in addition to, the receipts and noticing your dollars, Kitty, you made a great point about the organizations. So I would like anyone out there who can recommend an organization, a leader of an organization that I can make contact with that might be contemplating planning some type of retreat or some type of upcoming event. I would love to be introduced to those people and see if I can introduce them to our opportunity as a possibility to host their retreat and have them both heal while also contributing to a global ecosystem.
Awesome, awesome. I did get one message, and this is from our beloved sister for Africa One, Sister Shingai. She writes, Dr. Steph, my daughter has developed a cap cleaning kit system over the past few years. She sells online, but she's struggling to raise capital to expand. Are you able to advise her? She's in the UK.
Absolutely. So, uh, I just started doing a weekly mastermind that's aimed to help anyone that has a business that wants to make $1 million this year. And so it's a
Mm-hmm.
free mastermind group that I do every Wednesday. It's at 5 p.m. Pacific time. And Kitty, you can, I think you're connected to that, but maybe I'll
Mm-hmm.
send you back a link so that you can post it for
And
anyone
then
that.
you can always share your email as well. She can reach you directly and get that directly from you, as well as be added to your database.
Absolutely. So the email address is Dr. Ardrey, DRARDREY, at Zenoverse,
All right, I'll repeat that. That is DRARDREY, Dr. Ardrey, at ZenoverseWG.com.
Yes.
Awesome. Put that email right up for her and for anyone else out there who likes what they hear from you and might be just a little bit shy about coming on the air. And for the Wednesday group, I know it does coincide with a group, a collective that I've been with for several years, but I will get access to the replays. I'd love to contribute to the conversation because the people that you know that you gather are people that I always appreciate. And that's how we build long term collaboration and cooperation. So we'll work it out. So she will now be, Sister Shingai will be able to reach you directly so that her daughter can take advantage of the advice that you're able to share.
Absolutely. And I look forward to it. So thank you so much for that comment.
Thank you so much for all you bring in quality and value to our family. We are a global family, and one finger on one hand in one country is not going to get the job done. We need all 10 fingers on all the hands in all the places around the world where we can find ourselves at 1.789 billion strong on this planet. I don't think there's anything that we cannot and will not be able to accomplish within the next 40 years.
Absolutely. It's just setting the intention.
That's right. That's right. Thank you, Doc, for bringing part of today's broadcast.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you, LIB Radio family and YouTube and all of the other places that you find us. Thank you so much for giving us a little bit of your time today.
Awesome. Absolutely awesome. Peace and blessings. We'll be talking very shortly, Doc.
All right.
All right. And on that note, I want to thank all of you, for being loyal to what we do here at LIB Radio. We are a global family and we are intentional. We realize we are much stronger because of our collective, because of our unity. This week you heard me put together the entire list of where we are on this planet. We listed numbers of black people in Brazil, across Latin America, Canada, UK, across the European Union, in Western Asia. We listed the number of Africans on the motherland continent, Africans in India, Africans across Australo-Pacific or Australo-Melanesia region. We're 1.789 billion strong. One of every 2.71 people on this planet. No, we're 27.1% of the planetary population. What are we going to do with it? Let's grow, let's expand, let's develop. Let's be very positive and very centered about who we are, what we do, what assets are available to us, and how we're going to best utilize those assets to build the future that we want. I'm going to also remind you I have 3 new books out. And these 3 new books are undeniably well written, well data rich, and intended to create long-term sustainable empowerment for our group. So do support your brother as we do the best we can here at LIB Radio to support you, to support your ambitions, to support your children, your family's best self-interest. I am, because we are, and you know something, we are truly a great people. And that's why you tune in to LIB Radio, LIB TV, and livinginblack.com. We are your favorite. We aim to be your favorite. Peace and prosperity to each and every one of you.